Aloha and welcome to Trust and Verify, the only show where the host consistently tells you, don't trust me, verify it. Tonight you may be wondering, why in the hell are we seeing that little goofy dude over there in the corner? That's because our friend Boogie Bumper does not have his computer completely set up yet, but he did not want to miss this show for you. So he's still here. He's just joining us by audio only. So you're going to be stuck looking at that little emoticon over there of Boogie. But before we can get the show started, I still got to introduce my friend, my partner, my co-host, Boogie Bumper. Boogie, how's it going down there in Aussie?
Very good, James. Very good. Thanks to you. Good evening to everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing out. Pleasure to be here. You've got that wrong, James. It's not that the studio isn't completely set up yet. It's just that I didn't want to wear pants today. So this is a pants off Sunday. So we're strutting around. We're living large. We're living free in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Direct to you in the United States of
There's a visual for you.
Yes. This is one of those times where you'd rather be deaf and lucky that the cameras aren't working. So just before we get into it, James, I am going to mix it up today. I am going to do something a little bit different. But I just want to wish, because we're not going to be here next week, of course, Christmas celebrations. It's a time, I think, for family, for, reflection, obviously Christ as well. I last year, funnily enough, little personal anecdote, James, I got asked to work on Christmas Day, and I was working for a cardboard recycler at the time. And I said, no can do, my friend. And he said, why not? And I said, because Christ comes before cardboard. And he just looked at me and like sort of tipped his hat. And he said, no worries. No worries.
That is an amazing answer. Christ comes before cardboard. I freaking love that.
So I just want to wish you a Merry Christmas. It's been a sensational year together. It's an absolute pleasure working with you. And I want to wish the best audience on social media, the TAV audience, who I'm about to lampoon after this nice little greeting. I want to wish them a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year as well. And thanks to everyone for your support. And I'm sure you feel the same, James.
Absolutely echo all those sentiments. Merry Christmas to the land down under, my friend Boogie. It's been a great run. We're hoping that 2019 is our best obvious time ever, and just looking forward to working with you in the future. And absolutely, we will be back. I don't even know how that's going to work out with New Year's Eve, but we will do something. You guys will still see me, and we'll keep you informed as changes happen. But absolutely, Merry Christmas to the TAV Show audience, smartest people on the planet. I will see you on other shows, though, that don't occur on Christmas Eve and that don't occur on Christmas Day. But we will be around. So we're not going anywhere. Even if we don't do a show for a couple weeks, this show will be back 2019 at a minimum.
Yep. Oh, we're just getting started. 2019, I think, is going to be the year. This is the time when the battle lines will be drawn, James, and we'll finally get an idea of, who we're shooting at, to use a war analogy. And that brings me to the way I want to open the show tonight. Something a little different, pardon me. Oh, I love having a cough button. Part of the reason why I like this show, James, and part of the reason why I like working with you is this is something that I've told you before. We're very similar people in some respects, but we tend to come at things at very different ways. And I've often joked that, it's my job to lead people to the edge of the cliff, and it's your job to talk them out of jumping. And that's why this partnership works well. So what I want to do tonight, though, is open up with a few clips, and I want you to sit back for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm going to go through some thoughts. I'm going to walk through it very slowly, and then I'm going to give you the opportunity to slay me publicly, which I'm sure you will no doubt relish. But I've often been accused, James, of being like a downer, Debbie Downer kind of thing, which I find funny because 90% of the time I'm just making jokes about how terrible journalism is. But I wouldn't be honest with you if I wasn't able to discuss things in a certain way that may or may not appeal to the most magorist of MAGA types at all times. So what I'm just going to go through a couple of videos here and then bring up a discussion point, and I want to see what you make of it. Let's go.
President Trump is nearing the end of his second year in office, and he's also the focus of more than a half dozen investigations. Now, let's say this. We don't know exactly how many there are, because some might not have been made public.
Yeah, but here's what we do know. that is under investigation right now. The Trump Organization, the Trump Foundation, the Trump Campaign, the Trump Inauguration, and the Trump Transition, and the Trump Administration. All 6 of those under investigation as we sit here with you. And now CNN has learned special counsel Robert Mueller still wants to speak in person with President Trump about obstruction of justice. His lawyer.
Okay. So we know that an investigation is a good tactic. It's a good strategy. It's a good way to place a chokehold on your opponent in politics. People in politics do this all the time. I think what will be clear by the end of these 3 clips, James, is we now fully understand the Democrats' play and the Democrats' strategy, and I want to know how that works in with the fact that we're winning. Okay.
Welcome to Unfiltered. Here's tonight's headline: mass exodus. After abruptly announcing that White House Budget Director and OMB Chief Mick Mulvaney will now take on a temporary 3rd job as acting White House Chief of Staff just yesterday. Today, the president, again abruptly, announced the departure of White House Interior Secretary.
SE Cup, isn't she gorgeous though?
Trump tweeted, Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke will be leaving the administration at the end of the year. After having served for a period of almost 2 years, Ryan has accomplished much during his tenure, and I want to thank him for his service to our nation. The Trump administration will be announcing the new Secretary of the Interior next week.
Okay.
Now, by his own admission, Zinke's departure is a result of looming investigations for ethical violations while in Trump's cabinet. In a statement released today, Zinke said in part, after 30 years of public service, I cannot justify spending thousands of dollars defending myself and my family against false allegations.
Nice little manipulation there from the wonderful and exuberant SE Cup. Oh, this is because of investigations into ethics violations. He said, I can't spend thousands of dollars defending myself against false allegations. Let's move on to this one. So if you were one of the very few people on the planet, James, who was still not convinced that the entirety of the corporate media machine is working against Donald Trump, here is Exhibit C.
After everything that happened this week, it seems fitting that this morning started with a mystery. Quote, more than a dozen reporters lined up in the hallway outside the courtroom about an hour before the first of 3 cases were set to be argued before U.S. Court of Appeals judges. Reporters and members of the public were free to enter the courtroom during the first 2 cases. But the secrecy clampdown quickly followed as the court shifted gears to the sealed grand jury case. A security officer wearing blue rubber gloves checked the chambers for any devices left behind. The live audio feed went dead. And then the clerk kicked the journalists off the entire 5th floor. Determined to keep covering the story, reporters spread out around the courthouse and quickly set up a group email chain to pool their resources and communicate about who saw what in the hallways, the elevators, staircases, and entrances throughout the building.
Wait, reporters set up a group email chain within minutes, position themselves like some kind of pseudo-military platoon, James, around the courthouse? I'll keep watching the stairs. I'll keep watch out the front. I'll keep watch through the windows from the bushes. And then we'll send emails and we'll pool our resources. Hang on, I thought the media had ethics, James. I didn't know they were working together. Here's one more. I didn't know they were working. I didn't know they were colluding. Here's one more.
Now to President Trump, warning in that new interview overnight that if he is impeached, the people would revolt. Our senior White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, is
getting ahead of it.
With more. Good morning, Cecilia.
And Michael, good morning to
Trump
you.
threatens violence again.
Say President Trump should be impeached if it's proven that those hush money payments paid to porn star Stormy Daniels and playmate Karen McDougal were paid in order to influence the 2016 election. But in this new interview, President Trump says he did nothing wrong. Overnight, President Trump said he's not worried. There may be talk of impeachment, but he tells Reuters
still got that New York swagger, doesn't he?
He is in the clear. Quote, it's hard to impeach somebody who hasn't done anything wrong and who's created the greatest economy in the history of our country.
Now, that's where I'm afraid I must, James, disagree. And I want you to hear me out here. What is evident if you are a watcher of the corporate media, not just in clip form, but also in written form. So I'm talking about the big heavy hitters here, your Times, your Post. We all know, right, the reputation that these outlets have. Unfortunately, whilst we know the reputation that these outlets have, and our intelligent audience also knows the reputation that these outlets have, there is a large mass of people who do not. And this large mass of people can be maybe, it might even be, only mean 10% of the population, 20% of the population, 30%. The problem is that 10, 20 or 30% is still large enough to swing public opinion. Now, narrative it's kind of like a new fashioned word. Obviously, it's an old word. It's been around for a long time, but I see a lot of people using narrative, but then they never go to point B, because winning the narrative war is never the end. It's never the goal, because you win the narrative war to do something else. And the something else that you're trying to do is what? It's sway public opinion. Narrative is the river and public opinion is the ocean. And you're trying to get all of the rivers to flow into the ocean of your public opinion. That's why you're trying to win the narrative war. Mm-hmm. Now, we have historical precedents here. And again, remember what we say on this show. Perception is reality. It's all about the perception game. It doesn't matter if Donald Trump is innocent or guilty in real terms. Right. It doesn't matter if he's right or wrong in real terms. It doesn't matter if the reporting is accurate or false in real terms. When you're going after a public figure, you need public support.
That's right.
Now, Donald Trump, by comparison to Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, James, when he was impeached, he's far more popular at the same state of this presidency. It would be political suicide for the Democrats to attempt to impeach a president who is this popular. It didn't work for Bill Clinton, who was far less popular. In fact, it hurt the Republicans arguably for a decade after they tried to impeach Bill Clinton. When Richard Nixon was elected, James, he was arguably one of the most popular presidents of all time at the point of his election. It took the mainstream media just 18 months to successfully sway public opinion, not just of the voters, James, but to cause him to lose the support of Republicans as well, meaning that he had to resign lest he be impeached by the Republicans in the Senate. Now, we often talk about the swamp. We often talk about rhinos. Who here, hand on heart, swear to God, in this holiday season, can honestly say with full and supreme confidence that in 18 months' time, with the kind of media onslaught that we are seeing, that you couldn't get the 12 or 13 Republican votes that you need if you're a Democrat to flip and support an impeachment proceeding in the Senate? Are there 12 or 13 Republican senators who would do that? I would suggest there's probably more. And I'm not saying that it's going to be successful. And I'm not saying that it's, Donald Trump is out of here. I'm not saying Donald Trump did anything wrong. But right now, what I'm seeing is a reluctance for people. And with respect, I'm not trying to offend anybody. It's just my opinion. I've got to be honest. I am seeing a reluctance by people to take what's coming, this opposition, this war, this media campaign, in order to win the narrative, sway public opinion, to move impeachment proceedings. The Democrats are absolutely, I'm sure of it now, they're going to move impeachment proceedings in the House. Now, if they can convince a certain amount of Republicans that, hey, you need to support impeachment proceedings, otherwise you're going to be kicked out because they're going to make Donald Trump, in their eyes, unpopular over the next 18 months. Like I said, Richard Nixon, one of the most popular presidents of all time, when he got elected, 18 months it took them to chip away. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I think it's wise perhaps to be more aware of what's happening, the game that's happening here, rather than just sit back, put our feet up, put our hands behind our head and say, it's all right, he's got this. Everything's under control. Because I'm not sure everything is under control. So, James, now that I've led people to the ledge and, just give them a little bit of a push in the back, why don't you talk them off the ledge for me and tell me why I'm wrong?
Breaker 19. I think we got activity at the rear entrance. Wait, what's he doing? What's he doing? Leroy Jenkins! That's what I just imagined when you were talking about all these court reporters circling around the courthouse trying to figure out what the hell was going on. So these guys are not our friends, okay? We know this. So what do we have to do? We have to understand what's going on, and we have to fight for our president at all times. That's what we were talking about even last night on Ladies of Liberty. A lot of people don't understand what is going on in the real world. That's our job. Yes, you're absolutely right. If all things were happening in a vacuum and our side was not having anything to do with it, they would get away with it. But that's not the case. There is a lot of strategy going on. Remember what Donald Trump said for a lot, and we said as well, it was all about the Senate. It was all about the Senate. So what is he doing? He has made the Senate his friend. He's tried to keep his enemies in the Senate and his friends as close as he possibly can. He won those races for the senators. They know it. They know they owe him their elections, and they know ultimately that relies at our feet. So what do we have to do? We have to do our jobs and understand some of the strategy behind why do you think Donald Trump. Now look, I've exposed we're getting the wall. We're just getting the wall. You can just write that down, pen that in ink, and file it away. But why is he having this fight now? And why does he want to shut the government down now? Because, exactly what you said, he needs to have time to get his strategy enacted. He needs the people to understand who the enemy of the people are. Chuck, Nancy, what better way than a government shutdown? Okay? They're literally fighting the war you're exactly talking about, and they don't see it. They don't understand how he's maneuvered them, how he took. Look at what they did within less than 48 hours. They tried so hard to foist the government shutdown on him. Then he said, yep, I took it. That's right. I'm standing up. Then they realized, oh shit, we made a mistake. Now they're trying to take it back. Now they're taking ownership of it back, and it's backfiring still. They can't figure out how to win over the government shutdown. That's important. They're going to keep this argument going into the next year where it matters, where sealed. We told you, we have the evidence. We've seen it. Their sealed indictments are coming right now. Indictments are coming down right now as we speak. And their own little deal there is exposing that there's a war going on for real. We are fighting for our country, and we're trying very hard not to make this into a violent conflict. But make no mistake, the Patriots are pissed off. The Patriots are not going to accept it. There's no rhetoric the left can spew that will cause us to go back into, hiding. Okay? We will take to the streets. And when we take to the streets, look, this is what the left needs to understand. When they take to the streets, they burn their own cities down. When we take to the streets, we win a revolution against our government. Just think about the last time the Patriots took to the streets. Okay? We're done. We're not playing with you. And people like me that are really calm, really patient. I've got the patience of Job, and I'm ready. So just think about that. Where the level of we are dug in, we're getting what we want, or the government can just stay shut down. We don't care. We're done. Your highlight is very well taken. In fact, I would even argue there's plenty of social media idiots that claim they're MAGA that are throwing little darts at the president. Like, you don't understand you're working against your own self. That if you effectively hurt right now the president, you're effectively fighting for the left, no matter what you're saying. No matter what you're saying. It just doesn't, this is a narrative war to get to public opinion. If public opinion is not rock solid in what they believe, because you're throwing stupid ass darts about people that are no longer in the administration, like Jeff Sessions, let's argue all you want in private about whether or not Sessions should have recused himself and how he led to this mess. But out on social media screaming about Sessions, what good are you doing? You're doing nothing. The guy's no longer relevant. He's not in the administration. He has zero relevancy to what we're trying to accomplish. None. All that matters right now is A.G. Whitaker. And what acting Attorney General Whitaker is doing is pouring gasoline on the cases you want him to. He's pouring gasoline to the point where we in the public know so much and are so pissed off and so ready to go to war that it wouldn't even matter if the new AG comes in and didn't want to prosecute it, because he would know that he would instantly be lambasted in the public space. So that's what you have to understand, is that we are fighting right now, and your voice matters. I just posted a tweet today that proved it. The president himself posted a tweet that proves he listens to we the people. So tomorrow, you have to push the hashtag indict Hillary, hashtag shut it down. Support the president 100% right now, or you're going to lose the president 100%.
Yeah, and you know, again, I just want to stress, I'm not, you know, I saw a couple of comments in the chat, which is fine. Like, you know, throw your comments at me, that's fine. I appreciate it. I'm not saying that, you know, people are saying, oh no, just won't happen. Well, it has happened. Yeah. And what I'm telling you here is, as somebody who does this, you know, 8 hours a day, not many people can say that they sift through this garbage and this rhetoric for 8 hours a day. I do. And what I have picked up on is these people smell blood now. They can smell blood, because it's not just one investigation here. Like, forget about Russia. If you're not aware that this thing hasn't widened into full spectrum war, then you're not paying attention. It's not Russia. It's not campaign violations. They're going after Ivanka Trump for charging too much at Trump Hotel during the inauguration. They are going for every single possible target that they can find. And again, I have to stress, it doesn't matter if they're guilty or innocent. It doesn't matter if they did it or not. What it's about is, you know, and the late, great Andrew Breitbart used to talk about this concept a lot, James. You're flooding the zone. You are flooding the zone so that no other reporting, no positive reporting can break through. And this is the first time, I've got to tell you, hand on heart, in, you know, the last 2.5 years, that I've actually seen the corporate media and the Democrats and working in together in unison. They actually have like a renewed confidence. They have renewed zeal. They can smell blood in the water, and they think that they've got a chance here. They really do. It's not your typical attack point. And the reason I want to put it out there is because I don't want us to make the same mistake that they made in 2016 by underestimating your opponent. These people, you know, the snowflakes on the street, the memes, they're fantastic, but that's not the engine room of what we're dealing with here. The enemy is well honed and well trained, and they are very, very effective at what they do. Even though we can see it, you know, you often talk about the power of one, James. It's critical now. This is a critical time, because the power of one now has to be enacted at all levels, because you are going to be, you know, next time you're in a supermarket, look around you and see how many people are in that supermarket, and think, if there's 1,000 people in that supermarket, 300 of them are probably going home to watch CNN that night. You know what I mean? And they're going to be thinking that this impeachment is due and it's ready. And I just don't want to underestimate the opponent here. You've got to come with, you know, don't bring kid gloves, right?
Absolutely. I'm on board with exactly what you're trying. The message you're trying to deliver to the people right now is it's actually the title of this show. The message we're trying to deliver to you is quit trusting anybody except the president. And then verify the information of what you need to do to enact the power of one. You have to understand, you have to fight for the president right now. Everything's on the line right now. We know. Look, trust me, we know what's going on in the real world. We know all the avenues of, fruit of the poisonous tree. We understand that that right there, fruit of the poisonous tree, leads you, because if the FISA warrant is found to be fraudulently based, everything Mueller has done all goes away, because it's all fruit from that one poisonous tree. But it's up to judges, remember, to interpret this. Remember how the Ninth Circus has been able to get involved. And remember how some of these judges think they're the law and not the Constitution. And remember how judges think that they control what you decide to try to enact as a law, that they think they're above it because they're a judge. Just think about these things and understand.
Yeah, and Think about, James, that politicians will go after public figures more viciously if there's public support for them. If there's no public support for it, then nobody's going to jail. I'm sorry. Like it just doesn't work. That there has to be like an overwhelming wall of support. And what the left is trying to do now is flush a big overwhelming wall of defiance against you. And they're trying to get public opinion on their side. So, like, what are you doing in return? You know what I mean? We haven't got the corporate media. Fair enough. We haven't got the universities. Fair enough. But what do you have? Use what you've got, because they are not quitting. They're not giving up. They're not going away. Like Steve Bannon said, they're not just going to hand you your country back, right? This is going to get a lot worse. It's going to get a lot worse, and there's going to be investigations, and accusations and allegations. There is going to be a tsunami of bad news, and it's all going to be geared toward convincing the politicians that the public wants impeachment.
That's right. That's right. That's the exact point right there. And this is why I've told you, look, on Ladies of Liberty and this show, we talk strategy. We talk tactics. We definitely really don't talk right, wrong, guilty, not guilty so much. We literally explain what the strategy and tactics are. And this is the time. Strategy tells us you have to go and make an account over at Parler. Okay. The app parler.com, I think it is, but it's on Twitter. They actually have it. Parler. Why? Not because I want you to run away from Twitter. I don't. I want you to stay right here, and I want you to fight. And I want you to fight nonstop, every day. Hashtag indict Hillary. Hashtag shut it down. That's the fight. Why am I asking you to go make an account over at Parler? Because it's the strategy. We're creating leverage. We're creating a bridge for Donald Trump to have leverage over social media. Why? Because we need to lessen the power of Jack and Mark to degrade our message. See, you have to understand what's going on. We have to create a bridge for the president to be able to get to his people. Fuck the left. We don't care about them. They're a bunch of morons running around like chickens with their heads cut off. But we're going to fight them. You understand? He has to have a place to go if he wants to be able to dictate terms. Yeah, it's the same thing that we've been talking about all along. Why are we getting what we want out of trade deals? Because Donald Trump said, fuck you. Tariffs are going to go up and mirror you. That's why we're getting better trade deals. It's not because Donald Trump said, oh, let me stroke you. Do you need a hand job? That's what Obama does. See, one guy failed. This guy wins. But it's up to us to create the tools he needs to win. And that is a strategy. That is a tool. That is a way we're going to win. And trust me, we're winning. But I'm not ever have I said, sit back, relax, and don't do shit. Okay? I've always called for you to fight. I've always called for you to stand up for what's right. I've always explained the power of one. It only takes you to influence one person each. If each one of you can influence one person each, MAGA doubles in size. So even if you took the lefty numbers of 60 million people voted for Trump, we turn into 120 million before 2020. That's the power of one. You don't have to influence 10. Don't have to influence 100. All you have to do is influence one.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Let's mix it up a bit. Someone in the chat said this is a downer. I told you. I gave you a trigger warning. So I want to break it up, and you're going to be very pleased, James. I actually have to be very honest with you here. The Trust and Verify audience is very, very, very lucky to see this article, because I was going to selfishly keep it for myself, for my own show. But I thought, no. I have to do it here. I have to do it tonight. Since you mentioned hand jobs, James, lessons of Maria Bettina are men too easily flattered by young women to be trusted with power. Should men be allowed to have power at all? Latest scandals in Trump world suggest they simply can't be trusted. All men can't be trusted, James. We hate when people do stereotypes. Overall, the various scandals involving Donald Trump, his associates, and Russian agents tend not to bring to mind sexy spy thrillers so much as a screwy comedy. One theme, however, would fit just as comfortably in classic film noir as an absurdist comedy. Powerful, aging men brought low by their own pathetic desire to believe comely young women are really into them. This is political reporting in 2018. I, for one, am looking forward to New Year's Eve, James. I don't know about you. While there's no telling what Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller or any of the other federal investigators pulling various strings in Trump world might eventually discover, much of what's coming out right now is a direct consequence of this male picadillo, nurtured into being by a world that offers undue flattery to powerful and wealthy men so often that they start to buy it. Trump is personally under suspicion for a large number of crimes, but one that's come most clearly into focus in the past month involves his role in paying off women to stay silent about their past sexual encounters with him. His former lawyer, Michael Cohen, has pled guilty to his role in this and has publicly insisted that Trump knew exactly what they were doing. Now it appears that David Pecker, CEO of the company behind the National Enquirer, which helped pay off Trump's alleged mistresses, also seems to be cooperating with authorities. The most famous of these mistresses is, of course, Stormy Daniels, a porn star who has been waging a very public battle to shake off a non-disclosure agreement and tell her story. Hasn't she already told her story? I mean, once you say that the president's penis looks like a mushroom, I think the story's been told, Stormy. You know, I know writing in porn movies isn't necessarily at Shakespeare level, but please, let's not pretend like there hasn't been a spoiler. Quote, "It may have been the least impressive sex I've ever had, but clearly he didn't share that opinion," Daniels wrote of her encounter with Trump. Yeah, she can't tell her story. Instead, it seems Daniels was hanging around Trump in hopes of getting a TV deal and acquiesced to the sex because she thought it might help her get what she wanted. Uh-oh. I thought it was just love, James. Didn't you think it was just love? Why the Trump campaign wanted to cover this up at all has always been a bit of a mystery. I tend to agree. Like if news comes out, James, that Donald Trump has been banging every Playboy Playmate of the Year since 1986, I think that they don't desecrate his Hollywood star. They put it in, like, they enshrine it in gold at that point. This is exactly the kind of personality that would play. We might win California after all. What do you know? But it appears the cover-up was part of a larger strategy of portraying his marriage to Melania Trump, 24 years his junior, as a love story for the ages, instead of a transactional relationship between rich celebrity and failed model. The beautiful part, failed model. Well, I think she's got some goods. I'm a pretty good judge. I am a male. Those evil men that are. Maybe I'm too easily trusting of her, James. Maybe that's the problem here. Don't you love the premise here? Are men too easily flattered by young women to be trusted with power? Oh, okay, so I thought the world was being run by a patriarchy. Yeah. Now it seems the women are deciding whether or not we have power. Like, maybe we should take power off the men. How would you do it? With sex?
That's awesome. I got to start my comments here with giving credit to my sister Karen in the chat, who said, "Nobody wants to fuck the left. That's why they're always miserable." So that's an awesome quote, by the way. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm gonna let some male secrets out for all you women. The richer we are, the less we trust you. That's no bullshit. If you fall in love with me when I'm a broke dick, I trust you. You fall in love with me when I'm a millionaire, I don't trust you that much. Why? Because I don't know why you're after me. Because it's almost impossible to tell. And men aren't stupid. Yeah, sometimes we are stupid. But we do keep that in our mind. That's no bullshit. That's just a fact. That men understand that there's plenty of women that come after you just because you're famous or just because you have money. And that's what happens in all cases all around. Right? You see it. You watch it happen. So, to say that, somehow the men don't understand that is kind of ridiculous to me. It's literally like, basically saying we can't figure it out.
I've got to share with you this nugget of wisdom here, James, because the article goes on to talk about Maria Butina, the Russian spy, James, who was having sex and working for the NRA allegedly. But here's the conclusion at the end of this article from Salon, which we love dearly. Merry Christmas to the good folks at Salon. You just keep doing what you're doing. Don't you change. Don't you dare change a damn thing. The moral of this story should be obvious. The patriarchy is a threat to national security. There are all sorts of moral reasons why it's wrong that our society treats aging women like old hags and flatters men with lies about how they like fine wines. But this is about more than lofty philosophical arguments about gender justice. This is about the immediate and hopefully obvious dangers of giving so much power over to a group of people who are ready to hand over the car keys and the deed to the farmhouse the second a young lady makes goo-goo eyes at them. There you go, James. Patriarchy must end because it's a threat to national security. Why? Because young women can get men to do whatever they like. Sounds like the women are in control to me.
That's for sure sounds like the opposite of the patriarchy to me. By the way, Piper, I apologize. Piper in Ohio said, "You guys are depressing me. I want my hearts back." So we need to find a way to get back onto the fun train. But seriously, in all seriousness, we understand that some of these subjects are depressing to people. But we just basically try to show the show like how the mainstream media is trying to manipulate people and how we're fighting against it and really exposing the tricks behind the scenes.
Well, I've definitely got something to cheer you up. CNN, James, Iowa poll. Speaking of Iowa, let's go right to your home state. What the hell are you doing in Iowa, young lady, depressed young lady? First poll of likely caucus goers finds Biden, Sanders, and O'Rourke top of the list. Creepy Joe Biden, James. Creepy Joe Biden, the front runner for 20. Maybe that whole monologue that I did at the start about worrying about impeachment, maybe it's not such a big deal after all. I mean, if they're putting up Joe Biden against him, well, I think we can relax. Put your feet up. It's going to be fine.
Whether you are ready for it or not, election 2020 is a huge topic already. Who will the Democrats put up against President Trump? Will any Republicans challenge the president in a primary? And who will be that wild card candidate that comes out of nowhere? Remember, don't discount the wild cards. One of them is in the White House right now. I want to get CNN's Ryan Noble here with me now. And Ryan, let's talk Iowa, the state where the early pulse is taken to try and gauge which way the country.
Now, what you're going to see here is, again, the media doing what it does best, trying to control the politicians and trying to control public opinion. You watch this. Tell me what stands out for you in this, James, when you see this graphic and then hear the commentary after you see the graphic. You'll pick it right away. Play along at home. It's very fun.
As a whole, maybe leaning politically. And let me just throw up a picture for a moment. It is 6 prominent Democrats mentioned by people in Iowa.
You might not be able to see the percentages there. So likely Democratic caucus goers, their choice for nominee, James, 36% Joe Biden, 19% Bernie Sanders. So Joe Biden, clearly the front runner. And remember, this is the bellwether, right? This poll. Beto O'Rourke, 11%, Elizabeth Warren, 8%, Kamala Harris, 5%, and Spartacus bringing up the rear at 4%. Let's carry on.
Iowa, who say they will probably take part in the Democratic caucuses and who they would like to see run for president. We have these percentages because a new CNN Des Moines Register poll is out tonight. So, Ryan, talk us through the poll numbers and what else the survey is showing us.
And Anna, we should point out that the Des Moines Register poll, often thought of as the gold standard when it comes to polling in Iowa.
Gold standard.
And right now, it seems like Iowa voters are really on track with the rest of the country.
Really?
These numbers align pretty closely with the national numbers released earlier this week. And there's one name that's really impossible to ignore, and that is Beto O'Rourke.
Do you want to see those numbers again, James? Did you see how they did you see how they didn't mention Joe Biden's name?
Right. Exactly. And
they
did you also
mention Joe Biden's name?
That
they said this is the gold standard. The gold standard in polling, James. These numbers reflect what everybody wants around the country. Joe Biden's at 36%. Beto O'Rourke's at 11%. Oh, so, this is the gold standard. And there's one name on everyone's lips. Beto O'Rourke. Can you explain that to me? It seems to me like the media is pushing Beto O'Rourke, even though he's 1/3 as popular as Joe Biden is, according to the people. I wonder why that is. Why do you think that is, James?
Oh, absolutely.
Beto O'Rourke be easier to sell in the media than Joe Biden, do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, 100%. But this is what look, this is politics 101, and there's a couple of convenient things. Maybe they say it later and I didn't get the chance to hear it, but it should have been up front, but it tells you where their focus is, what they're taking out of this poll. Look at the real focus is, right, you can make the graphic any way you want it. Why is Beto in the center stage? Remember, in all presidential debates, center stage is where you want to be. Center stage on a graphic is the same. That nobody wants to be marginalized. That's where the term comes from, people. So you don't want to be on the margin. You want to be dead center. Okay. So why is Beto in the dead center? They could have wrote this up to put Biden in the center with his 36% and then, done it out exactly from there. They could have done it different ways. They could have flipped it, but you understand the point. Where do you want to be? Center stage. No. Also in this poll that they're talking about, and conspicuously absent is Michelle Obama. Remember what I told you, what they're going to do here. This is just about leading you down a path. Way early, they want to sway public opinion, and the next thing they're going to be talking about is how Beto O'Rourke is surging in the polls. He's up to 12%. I mean, this is what's going to go on. Remember, they did this to you for 2 other years. There's no reason you shouldn't understand what they're doing right now, right? They don't want Biden. Nobody wants Biden. Doesn't matter what they say the poll numbers say. Nobody wants Biden. So they're going to try to sell you Beto. They're going to then try to sell you surprise entrance from Michelle Obama. You watch. They're going to play this up. This is politics 101 right here.
And, going back to our topic last week, James, that we were talking about, the fourth dimension of politics, the new medium, the social media factor for these candidates, I think I'm more likely to see Beto O'Rourke, sitting on Periscope, talking with constituents, answering questions than I am to see Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. And I think the Democrats have figured out that Donald Trump's power, a lot of it came from social media engagement. And this is arguably what got people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez over the line, is being accessible to your voters, 24 hours a day, basically on social media, doing, Facebook Lives while you're cooking dinner, answering questions, being very natural, being very sellable, being very likable. Look at the smile, the boyish looks. He's young, he's hip, right? This is what the media is looking for. And to put that into perspective as well, another interesting article here from The Guardian, James, Yahoo parent Verizon cuts value of media brands by $4.6 billion. That includes the Huffington Post and AOL, James. The collective value of digital media brands, including Huffington Post, see the digital war, they know what's happening. They aren't stupid. Just because the mainstream media can't get in on the digital media war doesn't mean that they don't know what's happening. They're very aware of what's happening in this digital space. They just can't compete because they don't have the charisma, they don't have the X factor, they don't have the trustability, the likability, or the credibility. So they can't get involved. But they are definitely looking for ways to get involved. If that means buying everyone up, then that's what they'll do. Media brands including Huffington Post, Yahoo, and AOL once had a stock market capitalization of more than $200 billion, James, has been slashed to $200 million. From $200 billion to $200 million. And what I found interesting here, oftentimes there's little nuggets right at the end of these articles. Last month, Disney wrote down $157 million of its investment in Vice Media, James, the youth-focused upstart that had enjoyed a frothy $5.7 billion valuation. Disney took a $400 million stake in Vice in 2015, not that long ago, after investment by other traditional media companies, including Rupert Murdoch's 21st Century Fox and the advertising giant WPP. BuzzFeed, the failing pile of garbage, James, BuzzFeed. The digital media company founded by John Peretti missed its revenues last year, coming in at $260 million versus a planned $350 million. About 100 jobs were cut and a planned stock market flotation was postponed. In a recent interview, here's the key, Peretti appealed to rivals such as Vice, Vox Media, which owns brands including Recode, The Verge, Group 9 and Refinery, suggesting that they should think about merging to create scale needed to compete with Google and Facebook. They're getting smart. They're figuring it out. They're very, very slowly figuring it out. Here's a free one for you, James. Well, actually, we've done the wall. Let's do this one. This is a free hit, mate. Low and slow over home plate. Ruling strike down Obamacare moves health debate to center stage. You heard about this in Texas. The decision by a federal judge in Texas, James, to strike down all of the Affordable Care Act has thrust the volatile debate over healthcare onto center stage in a newly divided capital, imperiling the insurance coverage of millions of Americans while delivering a possible policy opening to Democrats. After campaigning vigorously on a pledge to protect patients with pre-existing medical conditions, a promise that helped return them to the House majority they had lost in 2010, Democrats vowed to move swiftly to defend the law and to safeguard its protections. On the defensive, Republicans campaigning this fall promised that they too backed the health law's protections for people with pre-existing medical conditions, but the Texas ruling illustrated the fruits and possible perils of their long-running campaign. Stepped up in the Trump era to remake the judiciary through the confirmation of dozens of conservative judges, yes, including 2 appointees to the Supreme Court. Do you think that Obamacare might meet a fiery demise in the Supreme Court, James, or are we reading too much into this in Texas?
Fiery demise is imminent. Absolutely. Why? Because remember, Chief Justice Roberts had to torture himself into a pretzel to sell Obamacare as a tax. The tax has been removed. You are now left with the straight standard argument. The government cannot compel its citizenry to purchase anything. End of discussion. It's over. There's nothing left but the fat lady singing. That's just all there is to that. Look, this is a fact of life that the left needs to understand. And I'm sure a lot of them, like one of the lefties that's in our scope right now, Heisenberg, he understands, he just wants to twist your mind, is that pre-existing conditions will always be a function of welfare. Always. It doesn't matter how you dress it up, what little skirt you put on it, how you teach it to dance. Always going to be a welfare payment. It's a question of who's going to pay that welfare. Is it going to be all of the people purchasing insurance? Is it going to be everybody that pays taxes? Is it going to be left to the states? Is it going to be left to who? That's the only question, because pre-existing conditions are no longer a gamble on your health for an insurer. There's nothing to gamble on. You're sick. That's done. Now all that's left is to pay the bills. So it's literally tripled the costs of things just by trying to force people to pay for it, instead of it being a function of charity, a function that was covered by doctors themselves. Why do some doctors not take Medicaid? Because it's still a function of charity. When you expanded those roles, you see, people always, the left loves to sell you Medicaid, Medicare, those types of businesses, and saying, look, they're the most successful programs in history. No, they're not. Well, they successfully negotiated prices. Yeah, because they forced doctors to take that amount. And when a doctor can't survive, the doctor's no longer a doctor. Nobody can survive at the rates they're trying. Charity. That's the portion of their business they can afford to give to charity through the function of taking Medicaid, Medicare. That's just the facts of life, people. You need to understand that that doctor has to pay his staff. That doctor has to pay his overhead. That doctor has to pay his student loans for learning to become a doctor. There is a ton that has to happen in these practices that have to be paid for by somebody. So pre-existing conditions will always be a function of welfare. You need to understand that to understand what the fight is about. That's what the fight is about. And they can argue all they want, including my own president. I stand up for President Trump. I just got done excoriating people about this, is that he's trying to win against people that are selling ignorant, low information people untruths. So he has to fight on that battlefield. Okay? It literally has to be a function of how do we pay for the people that need help? Because if you didn't have insurance before you got sick, you're no longer a gamble. Now you're a known risk. Not even a risk. Now you're a known factor. We know you're sick. This is what the bills are going to cost us. So somebody has to pay for that. And an insurer is not going to do that. That's why the rates have to be increased. That's what happened under Obamacare, is not sick people got screwed.
Yeah, and to people who say, to me often, James, well, how can you be against free healthcare? You're an Australian. You have free healthcare. And of course, this is the kind of shallow comment that you expect. It's not necessarily the person's fault, because they probably don't understand the system because they're not here and they're not able to observe it like I am. So what I would say is, if you want free healthcare, if there is such a thing. Of course there isn't. Hospitals cost money to build, they cost money to run, and people demand wages. So nothing's really free. Unless you're some kind of faith healer, in the third world somewhere, maybe you work for free. Even then, you're still getting fed. So, you're not really working for free even then. But if you want we have people dying on waiting lists. You might be on a waiting list for 2 years for hip surgery or something like that. That's a very common occurrence. But we have a system here, James, where some doctors will, use what we call Medicare, and other doctors will actually forego Medicare and charge patients. And patients have a choice whether they go to a doctor that charges or a doctor that doesn't. And you'll find that people, more often than not, especially recently, are going, they're going to the doctor and paying, the $30 or $50, whatever it is, for a consultation, because a lot of people say that the doctors that use Medicare, and, don't get me wrong, I've used it myself. Don't get me wrong. And I've had very good care in the past. But we're talking about a very large, mass of people here. And people find, sometimes they argue that when they go to the Medicare doctor, that it's all about getting them in and getting them out as quickly as possible. Because every time, you ring it up, there's a new person in the door, you ring it up, that bill goes to the government, that's paid by the taxpayer. People find that when they're paying their hard-earned money, and when the doctor is actually working to, have patients come back, or word of mouth, that they get more personalized care, for example. So there are certain things, if you want free healthcare, there are certain things you're going to have to accept as, day-to-day realities. And that is, the potential for less apt care and longer waiting lists. And by the way, if you have a rural hospital, for example, forget about it. Forget about it. Because what the government does is allocates resources to the most densely populated areas. So we have people living in rural areas, James, that have to travel 400 miles for simple surgery. Mm-hmm. Because their local hospital does not get the government funding that's needed. Why? Because there aren't enough people in that region in order to, justify a bureaucrat sending that amount of money there for this particular piece of equipment, right? Yeah. So it's tricky, right?
Yeah, I wanted to readdress, because it's clear by the chat room that people didn't understand what I said. So let me readdress this in maybe a different way. I'm not saying that you're not disguised, that Medicare, Medicaid are welfare. I'm not saying they're strictly that way. Yes, it's like an insurance. Yes, you're paying for it. The point that it becomes, where your mind needs to go and understand that it's welfare, is that the doctors are forced to make a decision. They are forced to decide whether they will accept Medicaid, Medicare at the prices Medicaid, Medicare are willing to pay them. Do you understand? The free market says that my doctor is worth, I'm going to make a number up, it doesn't matter. My doctor's worth $100 an hour. Medicare, Medicaid says they're going to pay you $55 an hour. The doctor then has to decide how many Medicaid, Medicare patients he can afford to take at that rate. That is what determines that it's welfare. Do you understand? That's the point where you have to understand that it's a subsidized system. Yes, you're paying for it. Yes, you are. It's like an insurance. But because of the way these things work, and because of the doctor having to pay his overhead, he has to base that on the number of patients he can see and treat, because he has to pay the bills. This is specifically why doctors essentially have to double, triple, quadruple bill an hour in order to pay their bills. That's why you pay an hour to see a doctor for 15 minutes, because he has to see 4 patients in that hour to make enough money to pay his bills. So you have to understand what the function is. I understand they have you believing all kinds of bullshit. Fuck that. We paid for it. It's not welfare, blah, blah, blah. I get it. You're confused because you're not understanding how the free market actually works. This is what happens when you have a moderated, modulated, and regulated free market. You have to see the differences of what's going on. I am a free sovereign citizen. That means I get to choose whether I do a job. Having said that, I also, the people that are going to pay me for that job, get to choose whether or not they want to pay me for that job. Then I have to decide whether those two things meet in the middle somewhere. That's what's going on. That's how Medicaid, Medicare screw you. They screw doctors. That's why you can't get free access to a lot of things. I understand it's become a necessary function of our world. I get that. We have to fix the problems, but you have to understand what the argument even is in order for you to understand why modifications need to occur. Is that those doctors are being forced to say, okay, I'm only going to get half as much money as needs to come in. So how do I make this work? How do I treat patients and still pay the bills for my nurses, for my staff, for my building, for the drugs you need, for the needles, for all of these things? It's all about the cost. So you have to understand these things.
And here's just a quick little one for you, James, before we get to the hammering, which is a very, very surreptitious way of announcing to you that you need to key up the intro. Because that's how we roll here. Very, very behind the scenes, very smooth. People that talk about, here's something for you to ponder if you want quote unquote free healthcare in the United States. And people bring up other countries that have it and they say, well, it works there, so why can't it work here? So let's go through them then. Okay, Canada. What's the population of Canada? About 30 million, thereabouts, 35 million, something like that. I think it's around that. Population of Australia, 25 million. Population of New Zealand, 4 million. Population of the UK, I think, is around 75, 80 million people. Population of Germany is roughly the same. Population of France is a little bit less, maybe 50-something million. Population of the United States, 320 million plus. There is no country on earth that has the kind of health plan that the Democrats want that has 320 million people. And I would suggest in very small countries where geographically, everybody's very close together, where there isn't large overheads. See, the other problem you've got to think about it too, nothing's free. You've got to think about healthcare is a demand that only ever increases with a resource that only ever diminishes, that being money. So you're always going to be playing catch up. We now have economic experts here in Australia, James, many of whom are on the left, mind you, who argue that if something isn't done about the healthcare system or our rapid population growth, thanks to mass migration, the country will be bankrupt and nobody gets healthcare in the next 10 years. That's our time frame. So it sounds good, doesn't it? Like everybody gets free healthcare, but what happens is if you give everybody free healthcare, then nobody gets free healthcare. And I want the people who absolutely positively cannot ever actually get any money whatsoever, I'm happy for them to have free healthcare. By all means, you can't work, you're disabled, you've got a serious problem, you get free healthcare. Anybody else who's making a dollar, no, I'm sorry. You need, if you want to be charitable, if you want to, everybody should get free healthcare, then you're going to have to foot the bill. And that's just the way it works, because otherwise nobody gets it. And is that what you want? I don't think it is. But with that being said, it's time for the hammering, James. A double up.
Stop the hammering.
We're going to be very quick here. Time is of the essence, but I do have a double hammering for you, James. First up, the lovely, the evergreen SE Cup with trying to explain what Michael Cohen is, even though Michael Cohen doesn't agree.
President Trump just sat down for his first interview since his longtime personal attorney, Michael Cohen, was sentenced to prison. The president chose Friendly Fox News, and here's a clip.
Friendly Fox.
Why did you hire Michael Cohen? He was known
She doesn't sound very friendly to me.
That was his title.
Very low-level work.
Why did
he
you
did
need
more
him?
public relations than he did law, but he did stuff. You'd see him on television. He was okay on television. But years ago, many years, like 12, 13 years ago, he did me a favor. He was on a committee, and he was so responsive and so good. And I said, he's a nice guy.
Wait a minute. That was the favor?
Years
because
ago.
people have been asking, well, what is the favor that he did the president? He was on a committee with you.
He was on a committee. It was a condominium committee many years ago. And he was a very big supporter of mine on that committee.
All right, I want to bring in CNN chief political correspondent Dana Bash and CNN political commentator S.E. Cupp.
The Bash and the Cup.
Not buying his explanation there, I will say, but let's talk about this defense that he came out of the gate with. We've heard this before when other associates have been charged, that they were a low-level employee,
Now
they did
he's
low-level work.
himself.
He said this even about someone in charge.
Sorry, James, say that again.
Defense, that he needed to defend himself against why he hired Cohen. Like, it's all language. It's interesting the framing these people put on things when it's completely unnecessary. Like, people like you and I, we hit the words, man. We hear that word and we go, why the hell are you trying to frame this as a defense? Like, that's not a defense. It's an explanation. She asked a question. He gave an answer. I mean, it's like saying, why is the sun yellow? I don't fucking know. It's yellow. See it?
Yeah. Well, speaking of words failing us, James.
Campaign. Was Michael Cohen, Dana, a low-level employee?
I mean, look, the answer is when you're talking about the Trump organization, you had Donald Trump and you had his children and a few other
Okay, remember, the question was Michael Cohen a low-level employee?
people. So it depends on how you're looking at it.
It's all about perspective. It's all about perspective. I guess if you were cleaning the toilets at Trump Tower, Michael Cohen does not look like a low-level employee. Am I right? Right? No. But when you're Donald Trump's kids, Michael Cohen, well, he's got... I mean, think about it. Use some basic logic here, guys. Donald Trump would have hundreds of lawyers. A company his size, he would have a lawyer in every single city that he does business in. Michael Cohen isn't the one guy. He isn't the guy. Donald Trump has lots of the guys everywhere.
I think the reality is anybody who maybe during that time got a cease and desist letter from Michael Cohen, because he was a very active lawyer.
Lawyer.
Legal problems.
Fixing. They love this term, the fixer. He was the fixer. Oh, so you mean he was good?
Other than the people he had alleged affairs with, just regular run-of-the-mill legal problems that most businessmen have, or anything of the type, would have assumed that he was somebody other than a low-level employee. And the fact that he was put on with you on CNN and others on CNN as somebody who knows him well also flies in the face of that claim.
Actually, if I'm Donald Trump, I'm putting the low-level employee on CNN. I'm not wasting my good talent on this shit show.
Also, just that he's known, right, Dana? Right, S.E. as a bit of a pit bull. I mean, it's hard to believe
he's a pit bull, James.
That an important person's pit bull is a low-level person.
I mean,
the pit bull that was crying in court last week. Oh, yeah.
And pit bull is putting it kindly. If you've ever had to work with, if you've ever get to Trump,
kindly.
Have to go through.
Condoleezza Rice, James.
Michael Cohen, we've all had our run-ins. I was told once by Michael Cohen, I will end you.
I will end you.
If you ask the president, he was not the president at the time, this was many years ago, if you ask Donald Trump any tough questions, you know, you don't send someone out to be that aggressive with people on your behalf if you don't implicitly trust them with your business, with your life, with your family. So to say that he was sort of a tertiary figure, you know, in the Trump orbit is simply not true.
Okay. A tertiary figure in the Trump orbit is simply not true. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the man himself, Mr. Cohen.
You call it blind loyalty. The prosecutors seem to suggest it was, Southern District prosecutors, I should add, seem to suggest it was you're being driven by greed and ambition.
No, that's inaccurate. But again, I took responsibility for my actions, but I didn't make my money working for Donald Trump.
What? I didn't make my money working for Donald Trump? What? James, this was the pit bull. This was the snarling attack dog. He was the fixer, James. You know, he was Donald Trump's personal fixer. I didn't make my money working for Donald Trump. What?
I think most of us out here understand who the Donald's fixer really was, and none of us speak his name for a very specific reason.
You're right. It was James R. It was James R. all along. So there you go. S.E. Cupp says S.E. Cupp, he's the fixer. He's the personal attorney. He's very high up in the Trump orbit. Michael Cohen says, no, I didn't make my money from Donald Trump. I've got one more quick one for you, James. James Comey, ladies and gentlemen. Let's check this out.
You look at this White House now, and it's hard to imagine 2 FBI agents ending up in the same room. How did that happen?
I sent them.
Listen to the crowd here. Like it's like the comedy jammings of James Comey.
Yeah.
Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation.
Something I wouldn't have done or gotten away with in a more organized investigation / administration. Is he admitting to being perhaps unethical? I thought this guy was a Boy Scout.
Right.
What's going on here?
More organized administration. The FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official. You would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
But James, I thought Donald Trump was destroying the democratic norms. I thought Donald Trump was the unethical one, James. Here you have the director of the FBI at the time saying, hey, we don't have to do what's normally done. We don't have to adhere to ethical standards here. Like normally for anybody else, for any other president, I would go through the White House counsel. But for this guy, no, fuck him. Let's just do what we want. Let's try and get away with it. It's his words. It's not mine. I'm not making it up. He said, I got away with it. Does anybody say they got away with it when they did something right? By the book? Remember that term, by the book? Remember that woman in the Obama administration? Oh, Mr. Obama said he wanted everything done by the book. By the book, James. This is James Comey. And this is the guy that gets paraded around as the upholder of justice and truth. This is the guy who's going to bring the gavel down. Like, you know, he's the guy. Like, this getting rid of him was an obstruction of justice.
Absolutely.
If I'm the president and I hear this is enough. This is enough to get rid of him. And say, what, you didn't go through the White House counsel? What, you got away with doing something unethical? Why the hell are you in this job? See you later. Am I wrong?
Not wrong at all. And it's more than unethical. Guess what? It's illegal. This is, again, what we're talking about with Michael Flynn is the fact that he was the spook. His job is to lie to everybody except his chain of command about anything he knows. Anything. That's his job, Chief Spook. Do you understand? It's all about subterfuge, right? Nobody knows what he knows. Nobody gets to know what he knows. That's just the rules. So if you don't clearly tell him he's the subject of an investigation where he must tell them the truth through some form of means, which is why you would involve the White House counsel, because there is a problem when it comes to information that may or may not lead to classified matters. Look, there are things that happen in our government, right or wrong. We're not debating whether or not those things are right or wrong, but we all understand what black budget is for. We all understand what black operations mean. Okay. This guy, 2 agents walking in to talk to Michael Flynn, they have no expectation of hearing the truth, and he has no obligation of telling the truth, except in a formal legal setting. And that is when the White House counsel would come in and say, you can't ask about this question because he can't answer about this question, and that's all I can tell you. That's it. Like, that's why you go through these protocols. So they are telling you, they deliberately set this game up. This is what he just said. Like, literally broke the law and was unethical.
And, you know, normally we have a bit of a laugh in the hammering, but I don't think this is worthy of a laugh.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm kind of laughing because I'm like, wow, the hubris of this guy. But this wraps me right back around to my original point that we started off the show with. And if you missed it, please go back and watch the replay, because I've never seen such brazen confidence, James.
Yep.
And these are the people that are trying to convince you out there that Donald Trump needs to follow the rules. And here we are. He's the director of the FBI saying, no, screw the rules. He gives a big middle finger to the rules. Screw the ethics. No, we were trying to get this guy. We were trying to pin him to a wall. So I thought I did, and I got away with it. I got away with it. He's telling you himself, right?
Yep.
That was Jim Comey talking about Mike Flynn.
And the media is just reveling in it. They're cheering. They're laughing. They're slapping him on the back. If you thought this was a fair fight, guess again. This is why I talk about the 3 laws of politics, James. Everything's about getting power, keeping power, or stopping your opponent from taking it. That's what's happening here. They don't care about ethics. They don't care about rules. They don't care about people breaking rules or breaking ethical standards or destroying democratic norms. They're doing it. They're doing it right in front of you. Right? And, this is what I'm saying. Like, it's not going to be easy, because these people will do whatever it takes. That's the mentality. That's a saying on the left. Mm-hmm. There was a very famous political power broker here, James, who wrote a book called Whatever It Takes, where he talks about these. He was in the Labor Party in Australia for 40 years. And, winning elections, throwing mud, investigations. You do whatever it takes to get power, to stop the other guy from getting it, because that's the game.
Who was Donald Trump's first national security advisor. Mike Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with Russians and became a cooperating witness in the Mueller probe.
You can see the media war, can't you? You can feel it. You can taste it.
Doing it. It was that he was a potential target for blackmail by the Russians, because they could leverage those lies over him. I asked former FBI.
Well, if telling lies makes you a potential target for blackmail, then I guess everybody in politics is always a target for blackmail all the time for the last 200 years, right?
Yep.
I mean, everyone in politics tells lies. James Comey's telling a lie right here. He doesn't care. The director of the FBI was a target for blackmail. I mean, J. Edgar Hoover used to get around in women's dresses. You know what I mean? Target for blackmail.
Told me if Donald Trump didn't pose the same threat. Sally Yates testified before Congress that she had to come over and tell the White House that Mike Flynn was a potential target for blackmail because the Russians knew the truth. Why wouldn't Donald Trump be a similar target for blackmail if until 2 weeks ago, the Russians knew more than we did about Donald Trump's interest in doing this?
She says the Russians knew more than we did. It's not hard. It's not hard to know more. It's okay. I'm not Russian either.
I'm careful with you here, because I don't want to talk about things I know from the investigation, from the election to when I was fired. It's obviously a concern about any public official if there's significant information that would expose them to embarrassment or to liability that a foreign adversary knows. Those are leverage points. It's the reason we told him about the prostitute business. We didn't know whether it was true or not, and frankly didn't really care, except...
Did he just say we didn't know whether it was true or not?
Yep, that's an admission. The FISA's illegal.
Yep. So I need to bring this up. What the fuck are we doing here? What are we waiting for? Yep. What's the timing here? Talk me now. You need to talk me off the ledge, James.
Well, I would say this. I'm going to say 2 things that are really, 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 really important. Number one, the timing is here. You can see what's going on. You can see who's talking to who. We've exposed that, look, the President of the United States is talking directly through us right now. Why? Because we've got Defense Secretary Mattis, we've got Attorney General Whitaker talking directly to Mike, authorizing him to release information to us, me, you, our friends, and for us to talk about it. So, we understand where the war is coming from, and I've been very clear and honest with you that the intel I get is authorized dissemination so that we know what's going on directly from the president. Having said that, now this is my own brain putting pieces together and understanding, and I got verification last night on Ladies of Liberty as well to part of this, is that, listen, if the FISA that started the entire Mueller investigation is found to be illegal, Comey just admitted it, that they violated the law to get it, that begins the fruit of the poisonous tree, And that means everything Mueller is investigating all gets thrown out and can never be used again against anybody. On top of that, if you were the president of the United States, wouldn't you want Mueller to get all of the shit that he's trying to do out and put it and make it part of his investigation, and then collapse the House, and then pull the rug out from under him? Because remember, fruit of the poisonous tree ends it all. The FISA brings down the House means exactly what that means. Everything. Every single thing. Because the very beginning of Mueller is predicated on an illegal FISA warrant. That's it. Everything goes away. Every single thing goes bye-bye. So that's why that's in Donald Trump's hip pocket. We're making sure of where Mueller's going, what he's exposing, but we're not stopping our fight. In fact, it's really good, right? It's really good to have all these people distracted. Think about it like this. If the media didn't have Mueller to chew on constantly, if the media didn't have anti-Trump hatred to chew on, don't you think they would be trying to dig and expose into our investigations, which could fuck up our investigations, which could screw up the Hillary indictments? That's what the Congress just tried to do to Mahoney and Doyle, right? They just tried to get them to basically screw themselves, and they both stood there, looked Meadows straight in the face and said, no, you can't do shit. So understand that these things are bigger than we could possibly imagine. Yes, this game is for all the marbles. It's literally for all the marbles. There has never been high stakes poker higher than this. So understand that you have to think about these things as they happen, but we're not living in a vacuum. We're actively fighting this war for our president. Tomorrow, definitely is going to start the ball rolling on that. I want to clean some stuff up when we're done with the hammering, but that's what basically I want to end on what's going on with Mueller.
No, I think that's a great place to jump off. Like I said, we normally do jokes and stuff, and I thought I was going to laugh, but then when I was, in the context of today's conversation and then watching this again, here's just two more points to add on to the back of yours. And you know that I come from a more skeptical standpoint. So here's the thing: there is absolute truth in the term timing is everything. That existed long before Q came out. That's been a truthism in politics for as long as I can remember. Yep. Politicians will sit on reports for years in order to release them at the opportune time to inflict the most damage. And there are moves and counter moves happening right now. Now, James Comey, and again, I'm telling you, like, this is what I was saying at the beginning of the show, guys. These people smell blood. They see an opportunity. They are playing very risky football here. These are Hail Marys that are being thrown. James Comey doing this interview is a risk. That's a risk. If you are on the other side, like, let's just say, like, again, I don't want to get bogged down in what's true and what's not, who's right and who's wrong. That really doesn't matter. It's all about who wins public opinion, who can best mold perception, who can sell their story better to more people, because the only people that get found guilty in politics, James, are the ones that most people hate. That's just the reality. I'm sorry. I wish it wasn't that way, but you never see popular people go down for crimes in politics. That's just the way it works. Right now, Donald Trump is pretty popular. The media is trying to tell you that he's not popular at all. I don't think James Comey is popular, but I think that the people who want Donald Trump to be unpopular see an opportunity for people like James Comey to do these kinds of speaking tours and little interviews in order to chip away at Donald Trump's popularity, even if it's 0.1% every day. Chip, 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 chip. They play the long game better than we do. We don't tend to play the long game on this side of the aisle. Unfortunately, we're not very good at it. We're learning, but are we learning fast enough? Maybe time will tell. So there's your Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I think here's a prediction for you, James. I put it out on Twitter the other day. Your hammering prediction. I think regardless of which party you identify with and which politicians you follow, next year the shit is going to hit the fan one way or another. So hold on to your seats, because it's going to be a hell of a ride.
Is that the hammering?
That's the hammering, baby.
Stop the hammering.
Very smooth, Jimmy. Very smooth, baby. We finished 2018 the way we started it.
So, a couple cleanups. Thank you all for being here. Aloha. We love you. Listen, I forgot what I was going to say, but the TAP show, we're going to try to keep coming to you on time, but we may not have a show next week, but we will be back in 2019. There's a lot going on. Follow Steel Truth. Steel Truth's going to have some big stuff going on this week. Brandon Strock will be following this show. Mike Closer is going to be on after Brandon Strock. There's a lot going on. Stay informed. Stay on top of this. Monday, that's what I wanted to clean up. Monday. Follow Border Narcotics. We're going to be putting out call to action exactly this. Hashtag indict Hillary. Hashtag shut it down. We've got to push the hashtag indict Hillary all Monday. And then on Tuesday, Ann Vandersteel is going to be at the General Flynn hearing. So the expectation from both General Flynn and his family is that on Tuesday, we're going to get this thing wrapped up. So there could be big time fireworks Monday and Tuesday. Okay. So you have to pay attention. You have to be engaged. I know it's a hard time to do that, but, stay tuned because shit is going down right now. Like Boogie said, this is the biggest game you have ever been part of in your entire life. Ever. We are playing for all of the marbles. 2019 is going to be spectacular. I think it's in our favor. But you do have to realize that no matter which side of the coin you're on, 2019 is going to seal somebody's fate. And I believe that God is on our side and we're going to win gloriously in 2019. That being said, if you want to follow me, you can follow me at Real Person Politics. If you want to follow him, you can follow him at Boogie Bumper. If you want to follow us, you can follow us at TAV Show. And you can always find us at tavshow.com. And podcasts for both Boogie and for me. Podbean.com. Look for him, I think, is / Boogie Bumper, and for me is /
the Daily Boogie. The Daily Boogie. Put that in the search engine.
There you go. So in the search engine, Podbean, it's the Daily Boogie for him, and for me, it's the Real Person Podcast. We love you guys. Aloha. If I can find my out here, I will absolutely hit it. We love you. Have a great night.